Hi, singers. I just updated the video description with some links for you. So if you want to refresh this page, the video description will have a few resources and it'll have some sheet music that we're going to use. Today, we're talking about phrasing and expression. The two go hand in hand, in my opinion. And if I could give just one piece of advice to every beginning singer to make them instantly sound more professional, more polished, it would be work on your phrasing. Because yes, any vocal technique that we work on will take time to be confident with. But phrasing is one of those things that is pretty intuitive if you just learn to listen for it and be mindful of it when you sing. It's not something like developing your head voice or developing your belt style that actually takes a lot of time to just get a handle on. So, drawing your attention to a few of those resources. The first is an article that I wrote on phrasing. It's just a good refresher after you watch this live lesson. If you're a 30 Day Singer student, I have a tutorial on phrasing there. And I included two YouTube videos as well: 5 ways to end a note without vibrato, and 4 types of onsets. So, those are looking at both the beginning and the end of your musical phrases. So before we go any further, what is phrasing or what is a phrase? You can think of phrasing and musical phrases as musical sentences. Oftentimes, within a piece of music, it will be an actual sentence, but other times it'll just be a part of a sentence. So, a musical phrase doesn't necessarily need to end in a period, but often a musical phrase will end where a comma would be, or a pause in your thinking, a hyphen, a semicolon. So, a very easy way to think about this is if you would pause at that point just in regular speech, that's a fine time to end the phrase or take a breath. So let me go over the other resources there in the video description for you are 4 songs that we'll try to use today. Always, Danny Boy, Someone to Watch Over Me, and Auld Lang Syne, all very well known copyright free songs. Um, and let me go over my plan with you today. So, I want to talk about what is phrasing, already touched on that, but why it's important, how to determine phrases, where dynamics and inflection come into play, how to end your phrases, and a short intro to what we'd call back phrasing. So, first, what is phrasing? It's how we break up and shape our musical sentences. So let's take a look at, a song we don't even need to look at sheet music for. Let's think about the song Happy Birthday. If we're singing, Happy birthday to you, it's pretty clear that that's a sentence, Happy birthday to you, and it's also a musical phrase. It ends, we pause, we take a breath. Happy birthday to you. Next phrase, Happy birthday to you. So far we have 2 musical phrases. Third phrase or third sentence, "Happy birthday, dear Sheila, hello." And then last phrase, "Happy birthday to you." Extremely straightforward, 4 phrases. Um, so then the question of how we shape our phrases comes into play. So I can establish those phrases, and really the music has established them for me by just taking a breath in between or pausing in between. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Basically, I'm just not breathing in between or pausing in the middle of any of those phrases. That would sound very bad if I went, Happy birthday to you, right? It sounds like I'm out of breath. It doesn't sound very good. So, this is a super straightforward example, but not all songs are as straightforward. So, we'll go over some examples together. The question, though, is giving the phrase shape. So, think about how you say the phrase, Happy birthday to you, or happy birthday to you. It's really up to you where you want to put that emphasis. Happy birthday to you, or happy birthday to you. You can place emphasis at different points in that phrase to clarify your meaning or your intention to your audience. Um, So that's what I usually mean by the shape of a phrase. Are we well, we'll talk about dynamics in a little bit, but what's the general shape or arc of the phrase? Are we gradually getting louder? Are we getting louder and then coming back? Do we start really loud and then end really soft? Um, so how we determine those phrases, it's going to impact where we breathe. It's going to impact what we mean, and it'll also impact our stylization because, typically, we're gonna add vibrato at the ends of phrases. "Happy birthday to you." We won't necessarily have time to add vibrato within that phrase. "Happy birthday." It would feel a little bit forced. So it's gonna impact how we stylize. Um, and it's a relatively easy way to sound more musical without any extra vocal skill needed. So let's take a look at the first example. Yeah, let's take a look at always. So if you look in the video description, and I will include this in the live chat as well. This is an Irving Berlin classic called Always. And we're going to determine what these phrases should be together. We'll see what the music tells us and then just what our brain tells us about what makes sense. Going to zoom in. That didn't work very well. I think there's another way to zoom, the magnifying glass perhaps. Oh no, there we go. I figured it out. Okay, so we have everything went wrong, and the whole day long I'd feel so blue. So that's in the key as written. For my own comfort, I'm just going to transpose this. I'm going to put it instead. Let's go key of E flat. Everything went wrong, and the whole day long I'd feel so blue. So take a look at this. We do have a comma. Everything went wrong, comma, and the whole day long I'll feel so blue. It's up to you if you want to observe that comma. Everything went wrong, and the whole day long. Or you could just steamroll over that comma. Everything went wrong, and the whole day long. If you wanted to connect those phrases into one longer phrase. Um, so everything went wrong, comma, that's up to you depending on your intended meaning and what you want to do with the phrase. And the whole day long, I'd feel so blue. Again, you have a choice to make. It's correct if you go, and the whole day long, comma, I'd feel so blue. Or you can, as written, no comma, carry through. And the whole day long, I'd feel so blue. And that makes the meaning of that sentence a little bit more clear. The whole day long, I'd feel so blue. Instead of everything went wrong and the whole day long, I'd feel so blue. Your audience, by the time you get to the end of that sentence, I'd feel so blue, they might have forgotten where you started. Um, a good way to think of this concept of phrasing is to watch different people performing Shakespeare. Shakespeare wrote in many of his plays and sonnets in iambic pentameter. So that means penta meaning five, da 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 da. And some people will um, perform Shakespeare in that way. Other people will be more flexible and fluid with it. And the way that they put those words together, where they take pauses, where they take breaths, you either understand what they're saying or you don't. A really good example of that, which I saw just the other day, it was the actor from Sherlock. He plays Moriarty in Sherlock. I think Andrew Scott is his name. And he was in a production of Hamlet. Let me see if I can find that. It's the very famous "To Be or Not to Be" um, soliloquy. Okay, so here it is. This is the full soliloquy. It's just under 4 minutes, but I would love for you to watch this when you get a chance, so maybe after this lesson, but it's such a great example of breaking up those phrases, putting words together, breathing in different spots or pausing in different spots in a way that truly enhances the meaning and makes it really clear to the audience. You can do the same thing with your singing, or you can obstruct the meaning if your phrasing makes no sense. Okay, let's keep looking at this tune of ours. We have another phrase right after this. For the longest while, I'd forget to smile, then I met you. Again, we have for the longest while, comma, because it's a dependent clause, right? Grammar people, help me out. For the longest while, comma, I'd forget to smile, then I met you. If you sang this just as it is on the page, for the longest while, I'd forget to smile, then I met you. That meaning is not really clear. So I'm going to instead break up that phrase. I'm going to sing, for the longest while, I'd forget to smile, pause, then I met you. For the longest while, I'd forget to smile, then I met you. So that's a little bit clearer that I'm talking about something in the past. For the longest while, I'd forget to smile, then I met you. I'm turning a new leaf, starting a new chapter of life. So that's a good example of you could just sing this as it is on the page and kind of obfuscate the meaning, or you can make your phrasing support the meaning. Now that my blue days have passed, now that I've found you at last. A lot of times when people sing this song, they'll sing, now that my blue days have passed, now that I've found you at last, instead of now that I've found you at last. Again, they're pausing there. They're breaking up that phrase to provide special emphasis on the words at last. Um, I don't think that it would make any sense to break up now that my blue days have passed or now that I've found you. Those feel like phrases that should stay together. All right. So, um, how to determine phrases? That's what we're doing right now. We're considering the text and the musical demands. Um, so there might be an instance in which the sentence it makes sense to break up, but the music kind of keeps going or it's building. And if you're to take a breath and mark the end of a phrase, it will cut the musical line in a not very nice way. Let me see if I can find an example of that. Let's maybe take a look at another tune. Let's take a look at Danny Boy. Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling. So, this is a good example. We have, oh, Danny boy, comma, the pipes are calling. So, based on the text alone, you could say, oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling. And that would be fine. But notice what that did to the musical phrase. The musical phrase, do 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 do. And did I put this link in the chat? I don't know that I remembered to. Let me put that. There you go. So if you're following along with the music or just with the words, there's the sheet music for you. So notice what happened there. If I stop, the pipes, the pipes. Number 1, there's only 8 notes there, so I don't have a lot of time to breathe. The pipes, and it ends up feeling forced. It kind of seems like I'm taking a breath there because I'm out of breath, not because I think it supports the musical phrase. So for me personally, I would sing, "Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling." And I would not observe that comma. I wouldn't make a phrase out of the pipes. How about the next line? From glen to glen and down the mountainside. Same kind of idea there. From glen to glen, comma, and down the mountainside. You could make a case for that. From glen to glen and down the mountainside. You could make a case for breaking up those phrases from glen to glen and down the mountainside. Or you'd sing from glen to glen and down the mountainside. And you would make that one long connected phrase. The summer's gone and all the roses falling. Again, a choice to make. The summer's gone and all the roses falling. Or the summer's gone and all the roses falling. I personally prefer the second one where I'm connecting the meaning of the summer being gone and all the roses falling. Um, but neither of those would be technically incorrect. So consider not only the text, but also the musical line or the musical phrase. And ask yourself, does it sound forced taking a breath here, or does it sound natural? Is this a place where someone would naturally pause to breathe? All right, so determining phrases, um, consider the text, consider the musical demands. I said this before, but commas, periods, pauses in the text as if it were spoken, those are all good candidates for the ends of a phrase. Um, are you going to observe every single punctuation? No, but those are good cues to you. If a comma would be there, if a hyphen would be there, that's a potential spot to breathe. And just ask yourself the question of where would be a natural place to pause if I was speaking this text aloud. And speaking of speaking the text aloud, that's a fantastic first step, especially if you're lost on, okay, what should this phrasing be? Um, Maybe it's a new song for you or it just doesn't feel very natural. Um, that can be an excellent first step of just dropping the melody entirely and speaking, for example, "Oh, Danny boy." I know it feels so silly to do this, it really does, but the pipes are calling. From glen to glen and down the mountainside, the summer's gone and all the roses falling. It's you must go and I must bide. So, not only does that give you a sense of where you would naturally pause and take a breath if you were speaking these words, it also gives you a sense of what your natural inflection is. It's you must go and I must bide. Or it's you must go and I must bide. It doesn't feel natural just to say, it's you must go and I must bide. In real life, when we repeat something, like we are with the phrase, it's you, we have a purpose for doing that. I don't repeat myself unless I'm trying to clarify my meaning, or maybe someone didn't hear me the first time. Um, so think about that as well. I know we don't think of songs as regular speech, but in order to give the most natural, expressive performance, it's best if we treat them that way. Why are you repeating yourself? Ask yourself that question. Why would I repeat myself in real life? Um, And another thing to do is whenever there is a repeat, let's say you have a chorus that repeats, as most songs do, um, ask yourself, what's different about this chorus? What new bit of meaning can I infuse into this or extract from this? That's something that I remember learning in musical theater training, because musical theater singers know it's not just a song, it's furthering the story somehow. So all of their expression and meaning has to be very clear. They need the audience to understand what they're saying because again, it's moving the plot along. It's not just, okay, we're going to pause now and sing a cool song. Um, Example would be the song Home from Beauty and the Beast. It's the song when Belle is at the castle and she starts pretty despairingly and she's talking about how she's locked away for, who knows when, but then there's this moment where she says, "Oh, but then as my life has been altered once, it can change again. Build higher walls around me, change every lock and key. Nothing lasts, nothing holds all of me. My heart's far, far away, home and free." So it's this moment that's really important for the audience to understand that she was very sad, dejected, lonely, but by the end of the song, she's found some inner strength and defiance almost about her situation. Anyways, the moral of the story is practice treating some of the songs you sing as if they are in a play, um, and infuse that much meaning and importance to the words, not just focused on the rhythm or the beat, but also really thinking about the words that you're saying. Um, okay, so once you've spoken a text, you're getting a sense for the inflection. Inflection just meaning word stress. So, for example, we say birthday. I don't say birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Um, Onset, that determines onset is just how you start a note. So we can start a note or somewhere in between. The last two kind of sounded the same. But anyways, onset determines how you're going to sing a note or an entire phrase. Usually if I start really breathy, "Oh, Danny boy," I'm probably going to be breathy for the duration of that phrase. If I start really strong, "Oh, oh," maybe that's too strong. "Oh, Danny boy," I'm probably going to be strong for the duration of that phrase. So that can set you up, your onset, how you start that first note. Um, in most phrases, there's going to be a natural rise and fall or a push and pull, a give and take. When singers sound boring, sometimes it's because their phrases don't have any shape to them. So they're just singing at exactly the same dynamic. For example, if I go, um, "But come ye back when summer's in the meadow, or when the valley's hushed and white with snow." You don't know what I'm singing about. It's clear that I don't know what I'm singing about. I'm just singing. If I think about what I'm singing and let my voice rise and fall a little bit, "But come ye back when summer's in the meadow, or when the valley's hushed and white with snow." Okay, so maybe we overdid, strong and then quiet when we're saying hushed and white with snow, but it's a maybe obvious example of you understanding what you're saying and that helping the audience also understand what you're saying. Also, an example of the rise and fall or the push and pull. Even in a song that is generally quiet or generally loud, there should still be dynamic variety there. And if you think that your voice or your singing sounds boring, ask yourself that question. What's my dynamic doing? Dynamic is just the fancy term for volume in music. So ask yourself, am I singing at the same volume the whole time? And if so, what are some other choices that I can make? Where can I grow? Where does it make sense to get louder? Where does it make sense to get a little bit quieter? And start to infuse that into your singing. Um, so most phrases will either get louder, get softer, or do some combination. Some examples, so like an example that comes to mind where the dynamic is flat the whole time. It's in a Billie Eilish song, and it's the one that's like da 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 da. If anyone knows that song that I'm talking about, da 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 da. Okay, it's Bad Guy. So that I think purposefully is staying at the same dynamic for that phrase. Da 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 da. But then obviously there's dynamic variety in the song overall. So maybe you have a reason, a specific reason for the dynamic staying flat at some point. And then last thing on dynamics and inflection. Inflection is just our word stress. So think about that as you're singing. But come ye back when summer's in the meadow. Word stress, summer, and meadow. But come ye back when summer's in the meadow. Instead of summer's in the meadow, where we're just flat, no inflection. Summer. Instead of summer's in the meadow. Again, you know how to do this. You do this when you speak. So just being aware of it and taking those spoken patterns or your speech patterns into your singing helps you sound more polished, more confident, more professional without really a ton of work, in my opinion. um, how to end your phrases. So you have a few options. A lot of times, the way we end a phrase is with vibrato. Let's take a look at a different song example. Let's look at Auld Lang Syne. And here's the link for that. Okay, this is in the key of C. And for the melody, we're looking at the top line. So it starts on a G. Okay, so take a look at these lines with me. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? We have a decision to make. Do we want to connect that phrase? Should old acquaintance be forgot and oh, I took a breath. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? What do you think? For me personally, I don't think that phrase needs to be connected. It feels pretty natural to say, should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Or at least it feels natural when I sing it with musical phrase being what it is. Um, okay, but the point here is how are we ending this phrase? Never brought to mind. Naturally, typically, some vibrato comes in on the end of phrases. Should old acquaintance be forgot? Gotta scroll. And days of old lang syne. Days of Auld Lang Syne. There's not a lot of time or space for vibrato until the end of these phrases. It would be a different story if there were more sustained long notes within the phrase itself, but the notes within the phrase are just not that long. So your time to let vibrato in is really at the end of the phrase. Other considerations for ending phrases. Um, I wrote down on here, think about releasing the phrase up rather than dumping the phrase out or just putting it down. So here's an example. Um, I have, let's say, that first line. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old. So each of those little breaks after the word forgot and then after the word mind as well, I was thinking about releasing that phrase up rather than releasing it down. I know this doesn't quite make sense, so that's why I'm demonstrating along with it. Um, what I mean by releasing up is you still have energy at the end of the phrase and you're already thinking about the next phrase that follows. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never. In that way, your audience doesn't even really care that you took a breath there if your energy continued and your intention kind of kept going forward. If I just stop abruptly or kind of dump out the phrase, should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old. It's not wrong and it's not bad, but there's not a sense of the longer phrase, "Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind?" Question mark. um, I want my audience to understand what I'm saying, and so I'm going to keep my energy up and keep my intention, kind of keep my eyes on the next phrase. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Even if I do pause and take a breath there, I'm thinking about the full phrase. I hope that makes sense. So, the idea or the kind of visual is releasing that phrase up or thinking about the longer phrase in which the shorter phrase belongs, not just stopping abruptly or bleh, you know, end of phrase, end of energy. That's what we don't want. Um, your vibrato can help soften the ending of phrases. If you don't have vibrato under control yet, that's okay. I did include that link in the video description of 5 ways to end a note without vibrato. And I'll put that link here in the live chat as well, just so that you have it. Okay, moving on. So we've talked about what phrasing is, why it's important, how to determine our phrases, dynamics and inflection or word stress, how to end phrases. And then last couple things I want to talk about. I want to talk about back phrasing, which I've already been employing just a little bit. But back phrasing is where we are purposefully ahead of or behind the beat, or ahead of or behind the beat if we were to sing the music as written. Another way of putting it is just altering the rhythm that you're singing with. Example. Auld Lang Syne is not the best example in my opinion, so I'm going to go to a different one. Let's look at Someone to Watch Over Me, and I'll put the link in the chat as well for you. When I go to sing this as written, you're going to hear how boring it is if I just sing this exactly as it is on the page. There's a saying old says that love is blind. Still, we're often told, seek and ye shall find. So I'm going to seek a certain lad I've had in mind. That is not what you're used to this song sounding like. You're probably used to, there's a saying old says that love is blind. Still, we're often told, seek and ye shall find. So that first phrase, and I'm most familiar with the Ella version, of course, um, that first phrase has the same feel of the music. So the music is da 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 da. We're sticking with that same idea of short notes for there's a saying old, little bit longer for old, says that love is blind. Same thing there. The next phrase, though, instead of still we're often told, seek and ye shall find. Oh, it's so boring, it hurts me. Um, still we're often told, seek and ye shall find. So Ella chooses to hold on to the word seek. It makes her technically late or behind the beat for the rest of that phrase, but she catches up because the word find is a dotted half note. It's very long. Seek and ye shall find. There's a lot of space there. So you can play with a song like that. When there's long sustained notes, you can be late or you can be early and you can eventually catch up. Um I'm scrolling down. So let's look at like the main part of the song where we have there's a somebody I'm longing to see. I hope. Okay, if we sang this as written, there's a somebody I'm longing to see. I hope that he turns out to be. That's actually not that different than what Ella does. I'd say, longing to see. I hope that he turns out to be. She does relax it a little bit, but the general shape, the bones are kind of there. And then when she sings, someone who watch, she's right on the beat for someone who quarter, quarter, quarter. And that means so much more once you've spent some time not being on the beat. That give and take is so wonderful that sometimes you're using back phrasing ahead of or behind the beat, and then sometimes you're right on the beat and everything aligns. Okay, we have a couple questions. NGC says, I want to ask, do vocal warm ups by itself improve your singing? So that's a good question. I would say yes, but it depends on what you need to work on and what vocal warm ups you're using. So, is it going to improve your voice by leaps and bounds just to do a random warm up that you find? It could, but there's no way, there's no way for that YouTube video to know what it is that you specifically need to work on. Um, Can warm ups improve your voice when they are targeted and when they are suitable for your range and for your goals? Yes, absolutely. That's kind of where a teacher comes in. They're assigning specific warm ups for your range. They're choosing the vowels carefully and the patterns. So I would say warm ups work best when you know what you need to work on, you know what your vocal range is, and you're using warm ups within that range or maybe stretching that range to target those specific skills. And that's something that I think sometimes a singer is aware of and sometimes they're not. Um, so, to answer the rest of your question, if we strain, how long should we do something like an anti strain exercise? How many times a day should be done? For how long? Which one? So, it's more important that you know why you are straining. The way that I approach kind of general, like, oh, my voice is feeling a little bit tight or heavy. What should I do? The way I generally approach that is first identifying where you're feeling that strain. So if you can identify, oh, it's my jaw, it's my neck, it's my tongue, it's my shoulders, then doing exercises to move those areas of your body are a good idea, or to remove them from the equation. So, an example, if you struggle with tongue tension, having the tongue out of the mouth, let's say in a tongue out hum, and singing on that, that can be a great way for you to just remove your tongue from the equation. So it is not straining when you sing. Um, but it doing those kinds of exercises, or doing exercises that are difficult to strain on, examples would be straw warm-ups or lip trills, things like that. Um, those are great for some of the first sounds that you make during a day, but you really need to know why you're straining, in what area of the voice you're straining. I would say what's pretty typical is that we tend to strain if we are relying solely on our chest voice to get our highest pitches. The solution for that would be approaching those same pitches in a lighter way, specifically using head voice for those pitches instead, and then gradually over time building strength there. But um, yeah, I would say general approach, start your warm up or start your practice time with exercises that are fairly impossible to strain on. So those would be your semi-occluded sounds. Semi-occluded just means semi-closed. Lip trill, straw, NG, hum, things like that. Typically people are not hurting themselves on exercises of that kind. And then pinpointing why and when am I straining, and then kind of investigating. Of course, that's also where a teacher comes into play. It's difficult to address every person's issue, generally. Um, Sheila was saying, sometimes I think I might use my vibrato too much. Can you come in? Um, so Sheila, it all depends on what genre you're singing. If it's appropriate in that genre, if you're singing a classic, a standard, um, you know, that's probably appropriate. If you're singing a pop song where the original singer is restraining their vibrato or restricting their vibrato usage, then that would be something to consider. Um, but in general, the fact that your vibrato comes in when it wants to and it's free, that's a good thing in my book. Um, and then Sheila's asking, can you come in after the beat in a measure and still keep the main rhythm? Good question. So we're returning to this concept of back phrasing. So let's say we have the phrase, so we have, there's a somebody I'm longing to see. I hope that he. What if we came in a beat late on I hope that he? There's a somebody I'm longing to see. I hope that he turns out. So, how we end up having to compensate for that is just cutting the word he short, or we'll be behind and we'll catch up later. There's a somebody I'm longing to see. I hope that he turns out to be someone, and then back on the beat for someone who'll watch. So that could work, coming in a beat late for both. I hope that he, and then turns out to be. It all just depends on what you want, what you think sounds cool and helps express the meaning. And then just understanding that eventually you do need to catch up, and we catch up either by singing faster ahead of the beat or cutting something short. So, example there, you could go beat. I hope that he beat turns out to be, instead of I hope that he, holding he for two beats. I hope that makes sense. But if you listen to the greats, as I know you do, Sheila, if you listen to excellent jazz singers, when they're employing back phrasing, they're going to be ahead of the beat sometimes, behind the beat other times, and then sometimes they'll be straight on, and a great example of that is Someone to Watch Over Me. By the time we get to someone to, she's on the beat, and it's such a nice contrast to everything that came before. All right, my friends, last thing before we officially move into Q&A mode, um, we got through everything that I wanted to, which is amazing. The last thing I want to say is you can think about your phrasing and practice phrasing. Obviously, most of the time we're doing that in songs. But even with your vocal warm ups, let's say you have a warm up that's like, ooh, or ma me me mo moo, something like that. Um, Rather than singing that one note at a time, ma me me mo moo, and being kind of choppy about it, or ooh, and I'm really worried about being precise with the pitch, but what I'm doing is singing note by note instead of phrase by phrase. Here's the difference. Ooh. That's me thinking about the entire phrase at hand rather than just thinking one note at a time. So that's just one easy peasy way that you can practice your awareness of phrasing, even in a vocal warm up or your vocal technique, section of your practice time. That's a good way to get yourself in that headspace. Is think of the melodic pattern of the warm up as a phrase, and think about my energy and connectedness is going to go all the way to the end of the phrase. When I take a breath, a new phrase starts. Um, but I'm not going to pause or be choppy just because I'm singing all these different notes. All right, so we do have 13 minutes for you to ask any questions you like. If you are here live, this time is yours. I'm going to take a drink of water, but any questions related to phrasing or not, up to you. Thank you, Sheila and Maria. Very sweet of you. So I did a live lesson on phrasing. This was a long time ago, like a year plus ago, and I focused mostly on Christmas songs, but I thought I should revisit this topic because it's an important one for singers of all experience levels. Um Anyways, okay. Um Okay, NGC said, I was yesterday singing live. One of the viewers said, your voice is great, but dictation, and I wonder if they meant diction, can be better. But I didn't understand what they meant because I was trained a lot for that song and sounded great. Okay, so I would guess if they said, I would guess that they meant diction and that just being pronunciation. So maybe that person couldn't quite understand every word that you were singing. I don't know, since I wasn't there. I'm just venturing a guess. Um so I would say it depends on what kind of song you're singing. For some songs and some settings, the diction matters a lot. So I was talking before about musical theater. Diction matters a lot because we're furthering the story. We need the audience to understand what we're saying. Um, and likewise, if you're singing like a classical song or you're singing something in a different language, lots of times we put extra emphasis, special emphasis on diction. If you're singing a pop song, goodness knows, diction is not all that important. Yes, we want to be understood, but in general, style matters a whole lot more than intelligibility. If you think about any pop singer, Do they sound really, really crisp and clear? Usually not. Usually not, right? We fill in the blanks and we look up the lyrics and we understand what they're saying, but be honest, like, can you understand every single word of a pop song upon first hearing? No, typically not, and it doesn't matter. So, NGC, I don't know what genre of music that you were singing, but I would say diction matters less in some styles, including pop and, yeah. Okay. My question is that when I sing, I feel like my throat is about to close and I want to learn to control my voice. Okay. So, that sensation that you're describing of your throat kind of closing up, a lot of times that is part of what's happening is constriction or narrowing in your throat. Um, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but another thing that could be happening that gives you that sensation of closing up is your larynx rising. So you can find your larynx if you haven't yet. It's a little bump of mostly cartilage and some bone and muscle. Um, your larynx before training, your larynx likes to help with the pitch. So when you sing a higher pitch, "Ooh," your larynx kinda tries to jump up, and when you sing a lower pitch, "Ah," your larynx tries to jump down. Um, so oftentimes if you're feeling that sensation of like my throat is closing up, the sound is getting cut off, that could be the culprit is that your larynx is kind of rising with the pitch and sort of cutting off your air and your sound. Um, so if that's the case, which it is for a lot of beginning singers, I would say look into some exercises, and I'll link some for you that I've done that help you train a more neutral larynx position, meaning it's more or less staying in the same spot. And when we're singing higher pitches, we're trying to keep the larynx relaxed. When we're singing lower pitches, we're also trying to keep it relaxed and not go down really low unnecessarily. Um, okay, so here is an 8.5 minute lesson for you and anyone with this similar issue. So I wrote neutral larynx exercises, and then I'm sure I've done more on the larynx. Let's see. Larynx position and singing. So here is another lesson that I did. So the first lesson that I linked was just a short one, 8.5 minutes. The second lesson I linked is another live lesson like this. So it's a full hour, 15 minutes of Q&A at the end. So we talk about what the larynx is, what it does, laryngeal height and tone, when we do want to use a higher low larynx, blah, blah, blah. So check that out, but definitely check out that 8.5 minute one. There's 3 warm-ups in there. And again, the goal is keeping that larynx a little bit more stable so that it is not rising up and kind of closing off or cutting off your sound as you're describing. I've got 6 more minutes for you. So if you have any questions, throw them in the chat here. I can give you a preview of live lessons to come. If you don't have any questions, I'll let you know what is coming down the pike. Okay. So next week, My topic is smoothing out your voice. And Sheila, if you're still here, I think you'll be interested in that one. We're covering blending registers, singing without a noticeable crack, and building our mix or middle voice. I will be gone for the second full week of March. So that's like the 13th through the 19th, kind of around there. So no live lesson from me that week. When I come back, Thursday the 24th, I have tips for loud and quiet singers. We'll cover air pressure and vocal fold compression, vowel shapes and their impact on our sound, and different resonance strategies, either to sing louder or softer, depending on what your natural tendency is. And the 28th of March, our topic is developing your unique sound. So we'll talk about musical influences, creativity, analyzing your natural sound, what your voice kind of likes to do, and what's a little bit more difficult for it to do. NGC was saying there are some songs that I like the remixes more than the original, but I need to remove the singer so I can sing karaoke. Any website that does that? Yes, absolutely. I shared this on TikTok just the other day. This website is vocalremover.org. And Kayeto, I think I have a lesson on singing like Shawn Mendes, specifically. So let me see if I can find that. Okay, so I have a style breakdown of Shawn Mendes right there, which is another hour. Definitely try that. And then I have 2 reaction videos, one to Shawn Mendes singing Dream, and then this one to him singing Monster with Justin Bieber. You're very welcome. Okay, so NGC, vocalremover.org, it's super easy to use, which is why I really like it. And it's free. So if you go to that website, you'll see browse my files. You need to have downloaded the song in MP3 format. So however you want to do that, if you can purchase the song, if it's not available for purchase, using a converter, and you can look up how to do that, converting, let's say, a YouTube video to an MP3 or wherever you're getting the file. And then the default will be for the music to be all the way up and the vocals to be all the way down when it does its conversion. Um, and then another website, because the only problem with Vocal Remover is that it does not right now have the ability for you to download the track. So I get around that. I've done that for some students before by just screen recording and saving the MP3. So I did that for a student at some point, can't remember. But that's what we did. We just hopped on Zoom for a second and recorded, because any Zoom recording saves as both an MP4 video file and an MP3 audio file. So that's what we did. The link I just shared, splitter.ai, that is a little less easy to use, in my opinion. They do have a free version of their site, and then they have some paid things that you could get a free trial of. Anyway, same idea, that you're dropping an audio file and then it is extracting the vocal and giving you these separate tracks. Yeah, you're very welcome. Um, Again, I didn't find it as easy to use. That's why I would say Vocal Remover first. But if you want, Splitter does allow you to download. Um, so that's helpful. I've used both of those websites and have not had to pay for either one. So good stuff. All right, my friends, I'm gonna let you go. Thanks for being here. So remember, we have live lessons coming up next week, the week after. Um, oh, I think the week after is when I'm gone, but I will see you here next week. Um, If you are here today, I assume that you're subscribed to the channel, but that's probably the best way to get alerted whenever there are new live lessons posted. Typically, they're posted well in advance with the date and time, and you can, click set reminder so you don't miss it. Um, all right. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your questions, and I will see you next time. Bye.